Well, it's a privilege to be here hosting this particular panel all the way from Singapore. So I'll urge you to make the best use of the time that we have together. As I get them started, I would like you to start thinking, because we have only time for one question from the floor. One question, right? So I'd like you to start thinking as I start the session with the four panelists that we have. We have Linda from American Express, we have Jane from J&J, and we have Hella from the B team, and we have, of course, Jean-Claude. Yeah, sorry, because everyone else is on a first name basis. Jean-Claude from the L'Oreal Group, the only male. But as Sophie has mentioned in this particular panel, we are not talking really about the gender diversity. We're talking about what can we as leaders do to create a more inclusive workplace. What can we as leaders do to accelerate that change and that transformation that we need to be seeing? All of us are leaders in the room, so I bet you there are people who are going to think up questions, so be the only one to ask the questions at the end of this session. I'm going to kick off with a question for Jane and Linda. Sitting on my right. In your opinion, what are some of the obstacles that is preventing us from accelerating the rate of change and transformation? Because we know that the rate of change is just being faster and going faster and faster. Why is it our transformation from whatever that is rhetorical right now into a reality is not going as fast?
So I'll go first, Jane. I guess I would say I think some of it is probably comfort zone. We can all relate to where we are today, where we were yesterday, where we might be tomorrow or a year from now is a little bit uncertain for us. And I think, at least as we think about it at American Express, and we think about transformation, which we often do. We were founded in 1850, so we've reimagined quite a few times over the course of decades. But one of the things that we think about is an open-mindedness or an agile mindset. And conveniently, that's converging with the way process design occurs these days. Agile workflows are really the way that a lot of things are getting accomplished in large organizations. And we take that all the way up to the mindset, and we think it's a really powerful way to think about transformation and how we can reimagine for a positive outcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to join the panel. I think what I would like to focus on is the central purpose of what we do and the speed with which organizations can get to the core of their purpose. I work for J&J. Some of you may know the company has a credo that's been in existence for about 75 years. And even as long ago as 75 years, the first chapter of the credo is about our patients and what we can do for them. And I feel that, we're living into that more and more these days and tapping into that central purpose of our workforce. Why do they come to work every day? And I do believe that the younger generation are demonstrating maybe a different set of values from my generation, and that's where the biggest change needs to be, about why people come to work. Do they get joy in what they do? Have they found that central purpose? And the speed with which one can accelerate a company along that axis to live into that purpose of what you do, who you impact by what you do, is incredibly important. So I think that would be one main topic that I would focus on in terms of speeding up change.
Right, so speeding up change, getting us out of the comfort zone, and then finding alignment in terms of the purpose.
Yeah, because you can move much more quickly if everybody is aligned around something and sees that purpose.
Right, but isn't comfort zone and purpose alignment, what we should be doing through the years of being in management, right? So what's so special for Hella and Jean-Claude? What's so special about this time that we are in right now that we need to think differently? That what are some of the forces or the trends that's at play that makes this time different?
Well,
I'm the CEO of the B team, and it was founded 6 years ago by Richard Branson and a group of courageous business leaders who said business as usual is no longer an option. Well, I think we all know today how true and how right they were, even if they were maybe ahead of some other business leaders. Essentially, in my opinion, we're facing three important crises or challenges right now, and then maybe a bigger overlaying one, and the three would be the existential climate crisis. I mean, we can't live beyond our planetary boundaries. There's no future for business or anyone else if we continue to do that, and the evidence is very clear we're doing that, taking out profit in our lifetimes at the expense of our children's generation. It's the crisis of inequality, whether that's gender inequality, financial inequality, or inequality for refugees and migrants, and I could go on. And last but not least, we have a crisis of trust. Trust is broken the world over. The social contract is no longer okay in any country that I know of. And no leader can continue to do business today without finding a way to be transparent and responsible and accountable in its leadership, because a new social contract won't be built without it. And overlaying those three crises, I think, is what I would call the crisis of conformity, which is very much what Linda was alluding to. We continue to do things the way we've done them for decades and think that we might have another outcome this time than we did 10 years ago when the global financial crisis hit us. Well, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, there's no way that we can continue to do leadership in the way that we're doing it and still have business or still have a social contract, trust, social fabric that holds, or planet that we can work within if we do that. So we need transformative leadership, very much purpose-driven, principled leadership. And we need bold and brave leaders who are willing to think outside of the box and lead with brave action and new ways of doing everything in their businesses.
Right. And, sir, your thoughts?
Yes. So, in a way, I agree with what you said, and I fully disagree. I think that, first, I agree with you, it's a question of be brave and be bold. So the first question is because we are not brave enough, and we are not able to change the culture, to ameliorate really the situation. Because it's great to do declaration, but I think it's time not only to declare, it's time to act and to be able. So I'm working on these topics for more than 15 years, and this is not my first time. I'm very happy to be with you at the Women's Forum. I did a lot of this kind of exchange, but I'm always very surprised because there is only poor result. This is, for me, it's one of my questions. So a lot of people are discussing about that for many years. And why, finally, so I agree with you, there is a lot of shifts, the world is changing, there is new expectation. I used to say that we are all millennials, because it's not a question of age, it's a question of expectation. So it's not because the new generation, in France, a few days ago, everybody spoke about the First World War. So what does it mean to have 20 years old, the 3rd of August in 1918, and it was a very hot summer, and everybody was expecting to be back 3 weeks after. So they spent 4 years, and 2 million of French people passed away, and 20 million of people in the world. Okay, so it's an expectation to change. So, for example, at L'Oréal, can tell you that even after 15 years, I was with my figure. So I know that some people of my team said, it's not time to speak about figures, but sorry guys, we have to speak about figures. So even after 15 years, you imagine that the top 150 people I'm working directly, because I'm both an HR and also in charge of inclusivity and diversity, it's only 34% of ladies. And I'm fighting for that every morning. So this is your question, is when are you able altogether to be brave? My other piece of advice, I'm sorry, it's not to be provocative, but I think that it's great that it's when male are doing the job. Because when very traditional male like I am, because I'm white with some blue eyes and some blonde hair, but for my hair it's a souvenir, but even if I'm working hard about that. But it's, why it's only when ladies are fighting for that? I think it's we need to do both, and I'm a massive example of people well-educated, well everything, but kind of consensus. Say, look guys, we need to work about that, the world is changing, there is many things to do, and nothing is changing.
I think that's a great context that you have just painted out for us. So in reality, Jean-Claude, what should and can leaders be doing right now to expedite that?
Because it's what she said. You know, this morning, I don't know if some of you saw that, this morning there is a communication about the French government, Muriel Pénicaud, Marielle Chapard, about this idea to say, it's a question to be brave. So first comment was, we need to solve in 3 years' time the salary gap, and there is no reason to have a gap between male and female in France. So we are all okay. Yes, good decision. 3 years, okay, 3 years. And finally, I saw in the document that, but if it's 5%, it's okay. So look, guys, it's 0 or it's 5%. And so are we all okay to say why there is still a salary gap between male and female? Are we able to solve it? Are we able to be brave and bold? Clearly, it requires effort and probably cash to do that.
Yes.
Are we all aligned to do that? Or finally, 5%, it's okay.
So let's just take it from the position of Deming and Drucker, right? Their belief is that the role of us leaders is to remove the barriers. What are some of the things that we can take action rather than write papers around for those barriers to be removed? What's American Express experience?
So I think some of it really comes down to the commitment to inclusion. I think we all understand the diversity part of the equation, and I think we all know it's about getting diverse thought, gender, culture into the pipeline. But once you get them in the pipeline, it's making them feel comfortable. And I think the inclusion part is the really tough part of the equation. So we're trying a lot of different things at American Express because not unlike a lot of other companies in the US, it remains a challenge for us. We, for almost 2 decades, the company was run by a man of color, Ken Chenault, who retired earlier this year after almost 2 decades as being our CEO. When he was the CEO, huge commitment to diversity, thought diversity, gender, and cultural diversity. He had groomed his successor, Steve Squeri, who took over in February, and already this year, we've made more women onto the executive committee than we had in recent past. So Steve promoted 2 females to join him at the executive committee table. So we're making progress, but we at American Express participated in a study that was done probably about 5 years ago by the Center for Talent Innovation. And in that study, one of the findings was that women want to be empowered and they want to empower others. And I think part of that empowerment equation has an inclusive element to it. Because if I seek to help develop a protege and let that person come into the pipeline and potentially take my role someday, then that's a great empowerment equation for me. I feel good about it, and the protege will feel good about it. For women, though, that are at the more senior level, what the research found was that we do need sponsors and, more importantly, advocates. Because a sponsor who stays silent in the room is not a valuable sponsor. The sponsor must convert over to being an advocate in order to say their views, share their views, put themselves out there, and oftentimes I think we're referring to men, to say what their experience in working with other women is, and to give the appearance that this, in my example, male leader, has an inclusive point of view. And the wider spread we can have that inclusion, the more progress I think that we will make.
Right. And Jane, from a healthcare perspective, there's a lot of transformation that's happening out in the healthcare industry and the wellness industry. Do you think that environment is ripe for a leapfrog rather than a linear progression of change?
Well, you're right. There's a huge amount going on in healthcare at the moment, not only with innovation with therapies in medicine, but also in digital health records, and that requires a huge change across not just industry, but also health providers, for example. And you asked about the barriers for change, and I think a lot of it is skills. I mean, for the new environment in healthcare, the skill sets that you need are different. And every time you review talent these days, you're always asking yourself, is this group of people good enough for the next sort of 5 years of business? So I think the talent challenge is a very great one. And I think the other movement to change is that your incentives need to be aligned by that. And I know we're going to talk about that, but I think that's incredibly important. Just to use an example, not about science, but about female diversity in J&J, I mean, at the end of the year, when we assess everyone in our company, senior leaders cannot get their, exceed in terms of their goals, no matter how brilliant their business has been, if they haven't moved the dial on female diversity. And the CEO will personally ask, what did this person do? And I think it needs real senior engagement to drive that change. And, sometimes it means changing the people or changing the skills, but that's got to happen quickly.
We had such a platform out in Singapore in September, and one of the CEOs mentioned that to see that change, CEOs ourselves need to invest in that change. And by investing, it's not just about money, it's not just about town hall, but I invest my time to be spending with the pipeline and spending with the people. Yeah. What's your experience, whether in the public sector or in your organizations, in terms of seeing senior leaders investing in that manner?
Well, we've got a very engaged CEO. I mean, he's particularly around gender. He's just signed up to, there's a lot of key themes. You mentioned plastics and the environment, and he's just signed up to an agreement to reduce plastic. You need someone to lead from the front all the time. And I think also bravery as well. Sometimes you need to hang out there and do something that you think, I'm not sure if this is going to make me the most competitive company at the end of the day. But the brave people, ultimately, I think, will be those that are successful because they're leading that change.
Right. Hello, what do you think from the engagement of the community and all?
Well, you need leaders with a moral compass, and I'm very proud of how the B team leaders have been leading the way. A recent example, some of you may not have heard of here, but Mark Benioff, who's one of our B leaders, he stepped up in San Francisco and led the way for tax increase to solve the homeless issue in San Francisco. He actually fought other tech leaders on this issue, but I have to say that to me, bold and brave leadership and principled and purpose-driven leadership cannot just be about your company. It has to be about the community we live in and on the planet that we actually are on. And ultimately, what we're trying to do at the B team is we want to shift the values at the heart of our economy and society towards humanity. Right now, I think the financial economy is at the heart of our society and our economy, and I say that as someone who ran an investment firm, so I say that with a lot of respect for the importance of the financial economy. But when did we decide that economic profit alone or GDP growth alone would be the only measurement of success? And I personally see gender balance, and I want to be very clear that it's about gender balance to me, as a lever to actually shift the values that are at the heart of our business, how we run our businesses, how we run our societies. So it's the key to making that change happen, in my opinion. The fact is, when we have women and men sitting together in somewhat balance around the table, the dialogue is better. It's broader. We are more likely to look at not just financial profit, but also people and planet as part of our definition of success. We make better decisions, and we deliver a better bottom line by doing this. So whether you look at what leaders are doing through the risk lens, I already painted the risks that are out there, or if you look at it through the business case, I think we all who are here know the business case. There is a third lens that I think really matters, and that's the moral and ethical lens. And one of my greatest concerns today is I see that being almost absent when it comes to the leadership of the tech sector. And right now, the consequences of that are broken democracies the world over. So I'm calling for, I guess, the moral compass that leaders need to embrace now to solve our big challenges and to lead on the back of values that go beyond their business case and the risks that they're addressing.
Yeah. I fully agree. It's a very interesting comment. Why? For example, when we are speaking with a great banker, a friend of L'Oréal, BNP Paribas, the L'Oréal result, the people say, lucky you are, L'Oréal, you are growing, you are always doing better. Do you think that it's by chance? Do you think that it's because lucky we are, everybody in our sector is growing? Even the fantastic G&G? No, it's related to what we did decades ago, when you are close to be 50-50. And it's great to be in the ExCo, but ExCo is not complicated, because it's a choice. You can say, okay, the question is the reason why, for example, I spoke about the 250, or in some companies 100, or even 1,000 managers. It's these figures that we are monitoring more or less every month to see if there is progress and if we are going to be 50-50, not in 2 generations, but tomorrow morning. And not because you are a lot of people there are women, as you know very well, better than male. It's impossible to promote a lady only because she's a lady. It's only a way of thinking of male. Say, I'm going to promote her because she's immediately the first effect will be, no, sorry guys, or I'm able to do that, or I'm the best, I'm going to be promoted or not. It's only a male way of thinking, say I'm going to promote you because you're ladies. Okay, this is a bias of one of the multiple biases. But you know, for example, at L'Oréal, what we are a fantastic example of the fact that if you are rebalancing, and I hope to be the first company with no salary gap, because even today it's 3%. But 3% is the conversation I had, and we have all with Jean-Paul Agon, is to change the paradigm. It's not to say we are progressing, because like all your companies, we started also at 15. But we are progressing year after year, and even if today is 3, say, why not to say, why it will be not 0? So it's what we are going to do this year, to say, look guys, new mobilization, new energy, and because also another topic, it's very interesting about only our achievement. It's say, look guys, when I joined the company 23 years ago, Marie-Claude was still there. It's funny because at this time the joke was, L'Oréal, it's a beauty company doing product for woman consumer, but this is male who are doing the product. When I came in the company, it was a vast majority of male in all the jobs. So it's a clear commitment from Owen Jones first and Mr. Agon during the last 12 years. Say, look guys, it's energetically, strongly, powerfully, we are going not to do positive discrimination, because what I said before, it's only a way of thinking coming from the male. Are we able to have enough talented, gifted, amazing ladies to replace, to be, for example, country manager, where everybody started an explanation. Country manager is complicated for a woman. Why? To be zone manager, because there is travel, so it's easy for a male to have 50% of expatriate. Why not to expatriate ladies? It's clear that there is another reflex. We have 1,000 expatriate. I can tell you that in HR, when I'm speaking with male, the first comment is, okay, darling, we are moving to Jakarta. When I'm speaking with a lady, say, no, I'm going to speak at home with my husband. Are you able to do a dual career? It's another angle and vision of the world. But what is sure, it's if there is no clear determination coming from the top, and it's an everyday battle. What I hope today to be with you for the last time, because I hope that the topic will be totally solved at L'Oréal very quickly. No gap salary, no management discussion, no training, nothing. So when we are going to be 50-50, I'm going to focus on other topics who are super important about diversity and inclusion. Because as all of you, who is thinking that women are a minority, both in life or in a company? Who is able to say that today?
Cheryl, Jane mentioned accountability. And,
sorry, I just wanted to pick up from there. You have described like the bright success that we want to be seeing. And I'm thinking we have taken years to reach where the change that we are seeing right now. What chances are there that we can leapfrog? Because a lot of the solutions that we are talking about right now has been spoken about for years, and we are seeing a little dent that's being made. How do we leapfrog that change? You know, if L'Oréal was to be the success story, imagination, we are not holding you accountable to whatever you say, but what do you think we can do differently?
It's exactly what she said. Mm-hmm. We are all speaking about millennials. L'Oréal, it's the #1 company in the world for ladies. So I can tell you, I'm attracting the best ladies of the world because they know that at L'Oréal, even against the GAFA of these companies, at L'Oréal it will be possible for them to be in an inclusive climate with a different culture and to be recognized because they are gifted and not because they are ladies or because they are the unique one of the team, like a kind of white elephant. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a white elephant in the room, there is a big one. So it's a question of inclusivity. All what you said are exactly right. The question is how you can size it, how you can accelerate what you said, leapfrog. The problem, the leapfrogging is 1 person per year. There is no massive change. And so as a citizen, all of us, we are observing a climate change. Suddenly, the climate in November, okay, but there is no many change about this kind of ability to shift massively.
But I think it takes hard work. I mean, to think there's some little switch that we flick and everything's in the garden's going to be rosy. It isn't. It hasn't been like that. It means moving every lever at every level in the organisation. The reason we focus on the top level is because we've got 50-50 in the rest of the organisation, and 30 or more at exec level as well. So that's why we focus there. But it's about every single thing. You mentioned inclusion, making sure that people appreciate each other for their qualities and not for their gender.
How do you hold people accountable for each of this?
And it's commitment from the very highest levels, I think. We brought 200 of our most senior women together back in May, and we spent 2 full days, and every single member of our executive committee sat in for the 2 full days. So we had a handful of men, and they didn't all sit on the front row like they would normally sit in a town hall. Instead, they sprinkled themselves into the audience, which was very powerful. And we closed out the 2 days with each member of the executive committee standing up and talking about, reflecting on the 2 days, what was that executive committee member going to do differently. And it was interesting. If I had to summarize the dozen or so commitments that were made, I would say first and foremost, it was a commitment to better understand what it is about women that causes us to oftentimes be disadvantaged. And there was a commitment made by the executive committee members to understand that perspective. Number 2 was to start developing deeper relationships. And that comes after understanding the perspective and then establishing those relationships. Number 3 was becoming a sponsor, and number 4 was focusing on succession. So it's accountability, and it's a little bit back to the session right after lunch where we talked about, is it corporate or is it government? I personally don't think quotas are the way to go here, because we still need to make hiring decisions and award the role to the most qualified candidate. But we have to have a diverse slate of candidates. And certainly, as we close out our women's conference in May, that commitment was made to make a concerted effort to have a diverse slate of candidates. Hold the role open until you do. And I think it's those types of things that are particularly powerful.
That's very brave to hold it, because operations will be on you to get things done, right?
Can I build on that? I'm from Iceland, and we ranked number 1 in terms of closing the gender gap, so I'm incredibly proud of that. And I think the reasons are complicated, and I think it's hard work, as Jane rightfully said. But in my country, women definitely led the way. I mean, they went on a strike in 1975 and showed the world that nothing works when women are not at work, and both men and women realized that. Because there was a day where no business was able to open because women were not at work, neither at home or at work. A few years later, we elected first country in the world a female as president. So, I mean, women really led the way. But there have been some really powerful moments that have changed things. So I'm going to say something that might sound radical here, but I think we should use the urgency of the Me Too movement that has been happening all over the world and actually has led to nearly 900 executives losing their positions in the US. And I'm actually somewhat concerned about this, because I'm feeling around me, just putting the truth out here, that there is certain backlash to the women's movement because of this. So there's fear, a lot of executives sitting around, when will my name be implicated? When did I do something that might be inappropriate? Or they're thinking, I'm not going to get a loan into an elevator with a woman, I'm not going to sponsor a woman, advocate for her, someone might misunderstand it as me having, liking her or doing something inappropriate. So I think the Me Too movement, I welcome it. And to me, it is like a Martin Luther King moment in history. I mean, it's a movement that is showing us that there's something really wrong. Our cultures are toxic, and I think they're equally toxic for women and men, actually. But maybe we need to build on it with the Man Too movement. So add a little N into that hashtag and bring men along, because we can't solve these challenges or get to gender balance without the power in the room. And still today, even in Iceland, the most gender-balanced country in the world, apparently, according to the World Economic Forum. We still don't have a single female in the Icelandic Stock Exchange. There's one here in the French Stock Exchange. I'm proud to say she's on the B team. So we are so far from having the power in these conversations. And I mean, thank you, bold and brave men, for being here, but they're still in complete minority in here. So my dream and my vision for moving this along is to actually start convening on International Women's Day CEOs who talk about this, because that's the only way we're ever going to change culture and build inclusive cultures. So instead of women gathering with women, which I think is good, and we've done a lot of, and we should continue, how about creating bold spaces where men gather and get to talk about this? We did that in Iceland, so this is a very concrete example. We hosted something 3 years ago, we called it the Barbershop Breakfast. We brought together the 100 most powerful men in Iceland. We had Gina Davis open the thing, they all showed up for her, I think, but then they stayed for a very important conversation. A conversation about what is the difference between being a real man, which is sort of this alpha male kind of role model that's out there that's equally toxic for men as women, in my opinion. And then we talk, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a good man? And so most of them do. When you approach the conversation as human beings, their sons, their brothers, their fathers.
Yes.
And interestingly, research shows us that fathers with adult daughters, they change their opinion as to this being a pipeline issue, and they have a much broader sense of what the obstacles are. So men too is my suggestion. I want to see CEOs really rise to leadership on this issue, and we're not going to shift culture without it.
But I think the fundamental point that you're making there is that there needs to be more honesty in the discussions that we have at work.
Yes.
You know, all of this feeling that you've got to be the alpha person, whether it's male or female, to be honest, is not right. And one of the things that we did in J&J, which I think levels up the genders, is we gave men 8 weeks paternity leave across the globe last year, which means that when you have a baby, you both, you know, whether you're a man or a woman, you take time off. So it's not limiting to say, oh, the women are taking time off, it's interrupting the work. Men, so you start to level up the playing field. Then you start to level up the playing field about honesty and authenticity. And when you have the discussions that you mentioned, then you get to the nub of the matter. You know, women often say, oh, I feel like I shouldn't be in a job, I feel I'm not good enough. If you ask men, they feel the same way when they're honest.
Very interestingly, when we published the book, The 24-Hour Woman, we had the longest queue in our book tours. It was men in the queue asking us when we're going to write the book for the 24-hour men. So it's men and women on the journey.
Exactly.
In your perspective.
I mean, I think it's absolutely the topic. Because, you know, it's funny. I'm doing what I said before. I'm working on this topic for more than 15 years. You imagine the intense conversation at home, for example, because I have a young daughter with my wife. She said, you are doing a speech, you are speaking about that, but are you helping me really? I can tell you it's a big topic, because the real topic is this one. Are we able to share really many things at home? I am a traditional guy who is thinking that my wife is going to be there because I'm working hard, she's working hard, but somebody is going to take care of the kids. I'm sharing really all the back office. This is the question, because the question is to say, look guys, are we able to enter really, or because it's great to say alpha male and all, we don't want to have it, but there is a so deeply rooted in the DNA. And so one of the work we are doing is to train people about this bias. And so, you know, it's a work. And so you imagine how many times I'm discussing with men at work, say, are you rebalancing really? Are you sharing? Because, for example, for my generation, I'm lucky I have many kids, but it's clear that as a traditional French top executive, we are very proud to be. I was there with my wife, but as soon as she delivered, I came back at the office, I don't know, 3 hours after. So everybody was there. I'm not going to take any days. I'm still on the floor working. So today, for this kind of topic, they say, look guys, he's going to stay 8 weeks or even 15 weeks. It's not because he's weak. It's not because he's different. It's because it's part of this New Deal. But it's complicated because it's clear that when we're speaking a lot of male at the top organization today, their education, their way of thinking, their environment had been so different. Because it's clear that, for example, myself, when I was at school, I was in a male school, okay? So it was a male environment with only male, with all the bias. You know, even this morning, so I spoke about Muriel and Marlène, but I saw also something. You imagine today, everybody is clapping in his hand in a football stadium. 25% of the spectators are able to offend with kind of words about many things. The question is how we are able to change behavior, and it's not only clicking in your fingers, it's how we can chat, how we can change, and it's not only big declaration, it's what I said before, it's a cultural shift, and how we can accelerate us as a company with all the brand, with all the cause, because when I'm L'Oréal Paris, if I'm changing, shifting. And my last comment, what I'm sorry about, and it's the reason why it's great to speak with other companies all the time. One of the reasons why we have been able to work on this journey, because we are not doing one thing, we are doing a ton of things. But what I'm considering, often L'Oréal is with other company on this topic, with another, but not with all. Because there is some companies say, I'm going to work about this topic, but not on this one because no, sorry guys. If you want to shift, you have to work on all the different, about harassment, about sexual harassment, about what you said, about unblocking. It's not only, I'm going to do a choice,
I think the bigger
and at the top we are working on it. No, so
as an organization, there's one piece that we can do, but I'm glad you brought up the point about being a father, being a male in the whole equation, right? Bringing individuals, not just at the leadership level, individual accountability towards this particular agenda. So from that perspective, we are looking at how can we change, not just as organizations, but as individuals and as a society, how can that conversations and all be done, right? So as we're going to have that one question from the audience, but I want to have a very quick round with the four of you. What is one commitment? You have had your leadership meeting. What was the one commitment that you made on that day for this particular agenda?
So I work in finance, and the commitment that we made was to pilot test a re-entry program for women or men who have been out of the workforce for 2 years. And we did that this summer. We did it in the form of an internship and brought in about half dozen, and the vast majority of them received offers and accepted offers and are doing quite well.
Very well done. Thank you. And Jane, what would be your one commitment?
I lead a company called Actelion, which Johnson & Johnson acquired last year. And when I came in, quite male-dominated at the senior level, no females on the leadership team. So, my commitment to the company, firstly, was to introduce our Women's Leadership Initiative, which we have throughout the globe with J&J. And then within that was to make sure that we accelerate, a handful of bright females very quickly through the company, put them through a lot more intensive training, and try to put some bets on people and sponsor them through the organization. So what I meant when I said, there's lots of little switches you need to flick, these are the sorts of things. It's about developing women, it's about sponsoring, I think that's very important. And just creating that environment, because in a Swiss organization as well, and Germany, the cultural, that's one thing we haven't talked about, the external cultural pressures that women are on in some countries to stay at home with the children is still very strong.
It's very strong, yes. That's very true, out in Asia too.
Yeah, exactly. So making sure that we provide a creche at work, continuing to do that was one thing that we've got already. So. And I think the other thing is, the most important thing is to role model how you want it to be. And it doesn't matter what it is in the organization, whether it's about gender diversity or anything else. How you behave and what you say is important is what other people will.
So is that your number one commitment, that you role model the way?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
All right. And Hella?
Well, I have invested 25 years of my career really passionate about gender balance, and I've approached it as an educator and women empowerment leader. I've approached it as an investor, as a woman board director and leader, and so I've tried a lot of different things, but my commitment is really to build on what I said before. So in 2019 now, I joined the B team just a few months ago, is really to bring men into this conversation in powerful ways, and in particularly bring male CEOs, they're still 95% or more in most countries, to the table, because building gender-balanced and inclusive cultures, diverse and inclusive cultures, is really about shifting the values inside and outside of our organizations to becoming more humane, to becoming more driven by also the moral and ethical side of being a good leader. It's not enough to chase profit anymore. So we need men to come along on that journey to shift the values.
Thank you. We have 7 minutes and 15 seconds left. Could I have that one question? Anyone else? Anyone would like? Yes. We have 3 questions? Really? Thank you, Sophie, for the extra time.
No, 3 questions in one row.
Oh, 3 questions in one row.
Seismic shifts happen in the day-to-day, right? And you talk about the day-to-day.
Yes.
Would you make a prediction for 2019 where you will see a discrete thing happen that closes the gap?
Okay, so her question is, we have incremental shifts every day, 2019, to the panelists. What is that big shift that we will be seeing? Thank you. That will close the gap. Thank you. Your name, please.
Oh, Christina.
Christina, thank you for the question.
So I'm proud to say that I have about half dozen of my male colleagues who are in the room today. I think that's a fantastic start. And I have all the confidence in the world that those guys out there, my colleagues at least, are going to go back to their workplaces, and the next time they have an open position, they're going to say, did we think about Catherine? Did we think about Susan? Let's take a risk on Linda. And I think that can go a long way.
Okay, Jane, would you like to take that question before we have the second question to be ready?
I think that the drive for business to be more purpose-driven will select for qualities that are more frequently seen amongst women, and that will drive change in the workforce and will self-select for more women.
Thank you. Next question. Anyone? Put up your hand so that the mic runners can come to you. Only one brave soul? Yes, there's a question back there. If you can give us your name and then your question, please.
My name's Trisha de Bourdrove. I'm a writer and an artist. I'm sorry, I've got gum in my mouth. I apologize. The topic of parental leave is really complicated, and it feeds the nuances of every culture. Couples have these kind of conversations: who's going to take the time off, etc. Do we need just a period of about 10 years where we make this mandatory for both parents? And those are the kinds of conversations that will take place, that will hurt, but I don't see how else we're going to do this if we're just leaving it up to free choice.
Yes.
Thank you for that question. I'd love to respond to that, because in 2001, Iceland actually introduced equal paternity and maternity leave. So we have some experience with this. It changed everything. And so that was a law that was led by a male finance minister who saw this as a major obstacle to how you choose who you hire and how you react to parental leave. In some sectors it didn't quite work. We also introduced a gender quota in 2013. And 12 years ago I used to be against it. And most men were against it, male directors, when we introduced gender quota in the boardroom. But it's really worked. Most men and nearly all women in the boardroom are now for it, because it's been such a positive experience.
Right.
So I really do believe that sometimes it makes sense to do the right things so that we see how good it is for all of us.
Jean-Claude, what's your thoughts around parental leave? You have a minute.
In order, it was not your question about, for example, what I'm dreaming or what is going to happen. First, the dream will be exactly what happened. You skip me. It's fantastic, because it means that it's great because you are totally empowered and you don't need me anymore. So it will be my dream.
No, I actually wanted you to answer the last question.
I know, but I'm going to answer. It's what I said, because, it's funny. Traditional men, they say, no, I didn't speak, I have to add something. Okay, so I think that first, what you said, quota is important. For example, only in France, Copé Zimmermann, everybody is clapping in his hands. Finally, at the board level, it's possible. My question is why Copé Zimmermann it's only 40% and 150? But You know, if there is no quota, it's the same thing. I'm not going to compare, because as soon as speaking about that, everybody is going to jump on me. But it's about, for example, disability. There is 36 countries in the world with quotas, and I can tell you that countries where there is quota, suddenly things are changing, and if not, nothing is going to move. We are like that, so we need to have KPI, we need to have objective, and I'm sorry for that. We need to push, and force, because if not, nothing is going to change.
So her question around paternity leave, parenting leave.
Parental leave, congratulations, but it's a big debate also to know if we are going to give exactly the same amount of time for men and women. We can discuss hours about that, but I think that what we have to do is to increase by definition. There is a kind of, what is great, a competition about that between companies for almost a year. So now there is Netflix, it's undetermined. There is companies in my beauty sector, some are doing 20 weeks, Great, good competition, healthy. The biggest is the best for people because they need time, they need to share, and I think it's good probably to align male and female.
Thank you. And Christina and Crystal, for the action takers, you are being rewarded. Come and get your copy of my book from me, The 24-Hour Woman. We want to reward for action because we have talked for a very long time. And this is the time for action. So come and get the book from me. But I did leave time, 30 seconds for Jean-Claude, because I wanted him to answer the question of what is your one commitment as the only man on our panel to make this an accelerated experience?
It's what I said. My commitment will be to succeed as soon as possible, to be 50-50, and not to have to come anymore to explain why you are not still at 50-50. And that's it. When I will be at 50-50, I'm going to jump on other topics, and L'Oréal will be done.
Well, let me rephrase that then. What is the one action you, as a male, would make the environment different?
But it's what I said, to be able, what you said, and to be able to help Suzanne, to help all of you, and say, in a meetings, not to have always to push for Suzanne, naturally say, Suzanne, she's going to lead Germany the next time. And not to have to push for Suzanne to be sure that there is Suzanne, but there is some other people, because it's one of my job today. There is 65 country managers. I can tell you it's not 50-50.
I actually wanted to compliment your comment around the role as a dad and as society that needs to change. So from a male perspective, what do you think is one action that you can role model for us?
It's to help my wife. I can tell you that my big topic is to be exemplary also at home and not only with you today about what my company is doing.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank my panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.